At its core, a story is a journey, not just of events, but of transformation. A character starts in one place, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and ends somewhere else. And the difference between those 2 points, that's the story. Stories are how we make sense of change, how we wrestle with fear, identity, failure, hope. And film is uniquely equipped to tell these stories because it speaks in its imagery. Not just the visual, but also in sound and in mood. You don't just follow a character's journey, you feel it. You sit in it. You drown in it. Drown in it! So let's take a look at our main character in today's analysis, Benjamin Braddock, sitting in a pool. Hey everyone, welcome back to Story Route, where we don't just talk about stories. We examine what they are and when they're done well. So grab your scuba suit, find a pool to sink into, and let's get digging. This is The Graduate.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
A good story isn't just a string of events. It's a window into the emotional state of its characters. It communicates the inner and outer world to show us what the point of it all is. And that point doesn't always have to be profound. Sometimes it's something as simple as, I don't know what I want. And that brings us to The Graduate, directed by Mike Nichols in 1967. The Graduate was released at a time when youth culture was experiencing a dramatic shift. Young people were beginning to reject the conformist values of their parents, and college students were grappling with distrust of authority and the struggle to come to terms with their own purpose in life. Around this time, the older generation's modesty and prosperity were deconstructed by the real-world sexual revolution and the breaking down of the American dream, with fears of war and instability. Nichols told this story of an uncomfortable youth entering this world through the lens of our main character, Benjamin. Benjamin is a fresh graduate, presumably sometime in the late 1960s. The Graduate, on the surface, has no real conventional story set up for us. All we can infer is that Ben is a graduate fresh out of college. He has no external obstacle in the form of a villain, no evil empire to overcome. His enemy is reality. It's the weight of other people's expectations crashing down on a boy who hasn't figured out who he is yet. So, how do you tell that story? There isn't a boss fight baked into the conflict, no big plot twist like Darth Vader, just a young man lost in a world that won't stop spinning. Well, the way you tell that story is why The Graduate to this day is used as a great example of how to tell a story. You let the film speak.
I've come to talk with you again.
Film is uniquely positioned to tell these kinds of internal stories. Where novels might describe emotion and theater might dramatize it, film embodies it. To speak through film is to use the language of cinema to communicate meaning and emotion without needing words. It's about trusting the tools of the medium. Composition, color, camera movement, pacing, sound, silence, all of it comes together to tell us what it means to say. To tell a story like Benjamin's, the film must go beyond the plot and the characters. The Graduate is told more through inertia. There is no large story beats that move the plot along. No infinity stones or MacGuffins that a character is chasing. No, instead the characters are moved by natural emotions and feelings that are emphasized through cinematography and sound design. To illustrate what I mean, let's take a look at just the opening scene of The Graduate. This is pure visual storytelling. Just a simple image that captures his emotional state. Passive, disengaged, going through the motions. If I were to show you this scene with no audio, you would keep an idea of what it wants to communicate. The blank, empty space in front of him shows an empty idea of where he's going. The vacant expression is like a disinterest in finding out. The people that pass him fill the space, like they know where they want to go and they move with urgency to get past him. Layered within this simple shot is another technique, blocking and movement. When a character stands still, juxtaposed by everything moving around him, it shows us, without saying anything, that they feel left behind. Their idle position is disconnected from the fast-moving pace around them. Then, if you want to add more layers to how film brings all of its elements together, when you turn the sound on, there is a voiceover coming from someone in the airport directing people where to go. It's like a foreshadowing that for Ben, all of his life and for the rest of this movie, he's going to be at the mercy of somebody telling him what to do, where to go, and how to feel. Within The Graduate, there's a lot of great shots, and some of them are just as comical as they are beautiful. And it would be easy to dismiss a lot of visuals in the film as a gag and only on the surface level. On its own, that's fine, because it makes the film worth watching to someone who has no interest in extracting a deeper meaning. It's still valid to watch a film just to enjoy it. But even this scene, where Ben's parents put him in a scuba suit, is actually one of the most important scenes in the movie when communicating how a character feels compared to the world around him. In this scene, Ben's parents shove him into a suit, a metaphor for the life that they've constantly chosen for him, whether it be through college or the connections that he should make. And then they force him underwater. He's observing the world from behind a mask, a suit he's unfamiliar with but was given to him. Here we see another technique. A subjective camera view. We're inside the helmet with Benjamin. We see what he sees, hear what he hears, or more accurately, doesn't hear. The film uses perspective to put us directly into his emotional experience, not just showing the metaphor, but immersing us inside of it. Color and lighting also play a key role in how a film tells a story, and for something shot in 1967, it's still just as striking. Mrs. Robinson, Benjamin's seductive neighbor, is introduced in the film to bring out Ben's internal struggles and reflect it visually. The sterile whites and muted tones of Benjamin's environment reflect his emotional numbness, and when Mrs. Robinson appears, she immediately stands out. She's dressed in a very dark tone, used in film to represent a corrupting or evil force.
Will you unzip my dress?
Her red car, which is pulling focus into danger or disruption through color, pulls into the darker and hidden colors in the neighborhood. The colors remain muted and hushed until Mrs. Robinson leads him into their living room to begin her seduction. Now, those muted colors are transformed into lush, vibrant tones and popped out backgrounds. This whole time, by using color and lighting, The Graduate has communicated Mrs. Robinson is leading Ben out of his mundane reality into a vibrant, exciting world of danger. And then there's sound design, or sometimes the absence of it. Silence in The Graduate isn't empty, it's heavy. It's very tense, it speaks louder than the words itself sometimes. The film allows characters to go long periods in between their sentences and dialogue to let words and double meanings settle in.
Yes, sir.
Are you listening?
Yes, I am.
Plastics.
Exactly how do you mean?
Subtext is allowed to resonate by giving the audience gaps to listen to things that aren't being verbally said, but communicated nonetheless. This is where film thrives. On a viewing, it doesn't need to be explained in the moment. It creates a feeling and lets us live in that feeling alongside the characters. Because although I won't go into great detail of everyone in this film, there's so many themes to extract. So much is said about these side characters without dedicating much time to their words or actions. It's not the language the characters use, it's the language of film.
Because a vision softly creeping left its seeds wide.
So much of the good of The Graduate is about how it uses cinematic language to echo Benjamin's emotional arc. One of those ways is through its framing. Throughout the film, Benjamin is constantly placed in boxes. He's seen through windows, framed by doorways, trapped inside confined spaces. Visually, he is always enclosed. Always stuck. This technique, framing within the frame, makes us feel the walls are closing in. Let me give you an example of what I mean. There's a scene where Mrs. Robinson throws the car keys into Benjamin's fish tank. Ben reaches into the tank, which is also one of the walls that confined him in the other scenes in the movie. He's reaching inside the tank to grab the keys to drive Mrs. Robinson, or otherwise to say that those keys are going to lead him into the excitement and purpose he's craving. Mrs. Robinson has gotten to him inside of his own walls and is also the person who is getting him to come out of them. Not only in the framing, but The Graduate is also very deliberate in how it's edited. Watch how scenes transition. There are harsh cuts, jarring shifts from one emotion to the next. There's even a famous sequence where Ben is jumping into the pool and lands in bed with Mrs. Robinson. This is the way that they allow time to blur without actually taking up time. One moment melts into the next. Days go by in seconds. It's not just clever editing, it's also to mirror Benjamin's dissociation. His sense of time and meaning has eroded. He's on autopilot, drifting between moments of slow shots and moving faster in between times he's trying to find Mrs. Robinson. And then, to bring it all together, they also thoughtfully put together the sound. Simon and Garfunkel's songs are woven throughout the film like an internal monologue. The sound of silence doesn't just underscore scenes to give them more emotion, it also underscores Benjamin. There's a disconnection, a quiet chaos, a numbing routine. Each repetition of the song changes the meaning and continues the through line of Ben falling deeper into the sound of silence. In the beginning, it's melancholy. He's coming home from college and he feels directionless. There's a sound of silence within his heart. In the middle, it feels ironic. There's so much going on, but he still feels that silence inside of himself. And by the end, it's completely devastating. Now, it's not just motif. He is literally living the sound of silence. They use the song as its own narrative device. Even if the characters can't literally hear it, it's essentially summing up what they're thinking. And all this leads into Act 3's thematic peak. Benjamin finally acts. When we started the film, Ben was directed where to go. He was stagnant, floating, unsure of where he's going, but all he knows is people are telling him what he should do. But when it comes time to make a choice for himself, he goes after his love interest for the film, the daughter of the seductive Mrs. Robinson, Elaine. Now, I haven't really talked about Elaine too much because this video isn't about her, but to sum it all up, Elaine is also a mirror that Benjamin can relate to. They're both victims of other people choosing and forcing their will onto them. And now Benjamin has to make a choice. Does he allow Mrs. Robinson and her husband to keep him away from her? Or does he choose his own path? Well, he chooses to chase Elaine. He ends up disrupting a wedding that was the product of other people trapping Elaine into a life that she hasn't chosen for herself either. He finally breaks free from his parents, from Mrs. Robinson, from the life that everyone has directed him to live. But the film itself questions whether this action is true liberation or just another performance. A knee-jerk rebellion without real direction. If both characters' arcs are to break free from what others chose for them, is this really better? They're breaking the mundane, but now they're trapping themselves into something they're not quite sure they want either. And all that talk about framing and emotion and things unsaid, it all comes together and culminates in the scene on the bus, where they're both just staring. They escaped. They won. But the silence returns. The smiles fade. And the weight of what now sinks in. And in the background, we hear that soundtrack again. The sound of silence.
I've come to talk with you again.
That's where The Graduate quietly upends everything we expect from a coming-of-age film. The cinematic language was already a clue that this story would be told differently, but it really goes the extra mile to do so. Most stories build to a climax and then resolve. There's a final battle, a declaration of love, a moment of triumph. The hero stands taller, wiser. The music swells. The Graduate gives us none of that. It gives us a bus ride, a smile, and then silence. Benjamin and Elaine are free, yeah, but freedom isn't framed as a victory. It's framed as a void. And that's where The Graduate becomes something special. Not because it follows a character arc, but because it deconstructs it. This isn't a story told through character growth. It's told through emotional movement, through image, sound, rhythm. The camera doesn't explain Benjamin, it feels him. It mirrors his disconnection in that endless floating, in those montage transitions, in the lyrical repetition of the sound of silence. So when we get to that final scene, the film doesn't resolve Benjamin's journey. It exposes it. Everything they've been framing and showing us in the filmmaking is put out to bear by the end of his journey. You see that smile fade, that quiet discomfort creeping in. Not because he made the wrong choice necessarily, but because he was chasing an answer that might not exist. With the way the camera lingers and it stretches out the moment, the audience, us, are waiting for closure, and it never comes. And that's the point. The Graduate doesn't end with an exclamation mark. Although you would think so because of how it's been set up, it ends with a question mark. Not did they make it, but should they have? It's a film that dares to tell us, growing up doesn't come with clarity. Sometimes it comes with even more uncertainty. And in that sense, it might be the most honest coming-of-age story ever told. And it did so not just through its narrative, but in the way that it brought the narrative to life. So the next time you watch a film, keep in mind you're not just being told a story. The phrase show, don't tell is essential to how film separates itself from other forms of storytelling. The impact isn't being told the story, it's being shown the things that aren't needed to be said. Much like humans interact and communicate with body language, facial expressions, and demeanor, film brings a fictional world to our forefront by allowing us to connect with familiar emotions. A lot of discourse in the topic of cinema revolves around whether this film is objectively good or the director means this, so you must consume it as that. But film allows us to visually express what we feel inside. Don't take the stories you're told for granted out of fear that you're looking too deep into it, because film isn't a medium that is limited by intention. The Graduate lays out the blueprint of how a story can be told well through movies, and I made this video as an encouragement to those who have your favorite stories to appreciate them both for what they objectively are and to hold true to what they subjectively mean to you. Because The Graduate was telling a story of an aimless graduate in the 1960s, but I saw this film as a high schooler in the 2010s. Although I didn't personally understand the pull of seduction and the long-lasting consequences of Mrs. Robinson's cycle, I did resonate with Ben's feelings of uncertainty for the future and the craving for adventure. Did I miss all of what the film meant? Sure, but the story being told to me, I was still able to understand it and apply it to my own life. And in your own life, there's always a never-ending balance of the story you're telling and the ones you're being told. Some films will feel like a point of view, like you personally have seen yourself in the conflict of the main character. Other times, a story is being told to you that even if you don't know what they feel, it's helping you understand the storyteller or others like them. Maybe there's a film that will show you exactly what you're trying to say. And I wish more than anything that you hold on to that, and maybe even one day, just as I do with these stories I break down on my channel that have meaning to me, you can do the same. Finding the roots of a story isn't about taking things apart and only discussing the good and bad. It can be as simple as describing the things that made you feel the way that you do. Well, that was another story route, and we hope you all really enjoyed it. It's certainly different than what we usually do, but there's truly no limit to what stories are worth telling, whether it's comic books, anime, traditional film, or even the ones that happen today. We'll see you real soon, and until then, never stop looking at what makes the things you love work. Have a good one.